my success has been in being able to hire people who are better than me at that particular job.
That finding the right people, and not just from overall skill set perspective, but from the way they think and whether they're capable of systems thinking or not.
Not a cup of tea for everyone, right?
For sure.
सब लोग नहीं कर पाएंगे.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of InsideOps. Today we're going to be chatting with Kaustabh, who heads operations at Wakefit today, and he's held senior leadership positions in operations across companies like Dunzo, Licious, Locus, and now at Wakefit. So thank you for taking the time, Kaustabh. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I think let's just start off with if you can share a little bit about yourself, so the audience knows a little bit about your journey, trajectory, etc. So it'll help if you can share.
Absolutely. I've been a professional now for about 16 odd years, mostly in the operations and supply chain space. Somehow I found a lot of kick in the physical world and solving problems that I could immediately see a manifestation of, right? And that's what got me hooked onto operations and supply chain. Incidentally, in the last decade and a half that I've worked, about a decade or more I've spent in the furniture supply chain space. I think it's one of the more complex pieces because the products are not the same size.
Yeah.
They're big, they're bulky, and then there aren't too many players in India or globally who've solved the problem of not just middle mile logistics and warehousing, but even last mile logistics, right?
Yeah.
And hence it has been an area of interest and immense satisfaction to continuously keep improving what we can do for our end customers, right? So I started my furniture journey in 2010 with a very small furniture manufacturing company that was straight after IBM, right? It led to a lot of conversations at home, of course. My mom was like, you're going from an IBM to a furniture company. Is everything fine? Sab theek chal raha hai, nahi chal raha hai, what's up? I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I thought so. And I jumped into that space. So it was a good experience, right? I spent about a year there. It was good experience learning manufacturing operations, learning logistics of furniture. And my role needed me to also understand a lot of business, which I think most MBA grads want to learn very, very quickly. I got that opportunity when I was 28, so that was brilliant. I spent a year and then serendipitous meetings with the co-founders of Urban Ladder who were still ideating with the idea of starting Urban Ladder. One thing led to the other and I joined them as one of the first team members, right? I joined them before we had even launched our website. So I joined them around April of 2012. We launched urbanladder.com in July of 2012. And then I spent the next 7 years crafting, building one of the most beautiful experiences that a customer could have of buying furniture online. And I take a lot of pride in being a part of that journey. I owe a lot of what I am today to those 7 years. So that was great. From there on, I hopped on, did a few more stints here and there. Then I spent a lot of time at Dunzo. I spent close to a year and a half at Dunzo. So when today people ask me about supply chain logistics, I say I have managed fulfillment from 15 minutes to 15 weeks. And each of them come with their own set of very different kind of challenges.
And with varying sizes,
and
like
with
from
varying sizes, exactly.
Dunzo, like
from a
groceries
cigarette, from
or
a packet
daily
of cigarette to a king size bed, and again traveling 5 kilometers to 5,000 kilometers, right? So each of them come with its own set of complexities, and that's been the best part about my job over the last decade of being able to learn continuously about the intricacies, about what the customer expects and what you need to focus on, because for each of these supply chains, right, what is it that you're offering the customer is slightly different, right? And hence to be able to narrow on that specific piece and then keep solving for that specific piece is super important. For example, in the case of Dunzo or even in the case of Licious, being able to deliver quickly and that convenience that you offer, and of course assuming that you're taking the right product, is super important. But when you're talking furniture, it doesn't stop with you, actually does not even start with you delivering quickly. It really starts with you ensuring that the customer knows that they are going to get the product and the product that they bought online. After that, they are going to get the service of installation in a time frame that is suitable to them. After that, if something goes wrong, there is a recourse available to them to come back and ask for help. So the service elements across different categories, across different business models are extremely different. And to be able to appreciate and build on that has been the joy of my life.
Nice. So amazing. Such an amazing journey, and clearly, like, you've been so engaged, involved, and excited about it, about building all the pieces and tying it all together. So amazing. You worked across different sectors. You've also worked in SaaS. You worked in FMCG. You've worked in furniture, durables. Now, and you worked on scaling operations across these different verticals, right?
Yes.
So, what have been your biggest wins and your biggest challenges when it comes to scaling operations for supply chain?
So I think any operations and supply chain leader will tell you the three most important pillars for any sustainable supply chain org or an operations org are people, processes, and technology, right? But I believe on the people front, people aspect, if you continuously, and especially when you're scaling, and it has worked for me, so I consider it a significant win for me, right? My success has been in being able to hire people who are better than me at that particular job, right? And this realization, I think, dawned on me fairly early on in my career, and I think that has held me in good stead till date, touch wood. Hopefully, it continues to be true for me. But I think being able to hire good talent, being able to motivate them with a compelling vision and a very strong purpose has been, I think, super important for me. Right. Once you are able to get that going, then processes and technology will follow. Because if you don't have that coherent vision up front, then processes and technology cannot get set. Because you will have one or the other pieces of technology to buy, to build, and things will happen. But are they happening coherently towards a unified shared goal? Is the single largest determinant of success in the long term. And that only comes from being able to hire right and then being able to align the right set of folks on that particular path. For me, that has, I think, been the biggest win and also the challenge, because it's not easy to find people. And today the world is very different. When I started off at Urban Ladder 2012, people were still not very keen on operations and supply chain as a domain. Right? Today, thanks to the likes of a Flipkart, Amazon, and a whole host of other e-commerce companies who have grown, people find operations careers to not be a dead end or for lack of choices. Way back in 2010, 2012, 2013, people did not pick up operations as a career out of choice. Very, very few did. Right? Most people would either want to move into business roles, finance roles, marketing, and some of those professions, but not so much operations. Right? So for me to find people who took operations by choice meant that I had to sift through a lot of resumes and speak to a lot of people. And that was fun. I met a whole host of brilliant people who I still am in touch with. But it allowed me to then get in the absolute best people who I knew were motivated just by the trade, just by the art of operations, just by the science of operations, right? Because once you are motivated by the science and the art of operations, then you're not looking to wing it, right? And unfortunately, operations is one of those domains, and supply chain also, where the assumption is that you can wing it. है ना? सबको लगता है हमको operations आता है, ठीक है? Which is fair. Up to a particular point, anybody can do operations, but after a particular point when it becomes complex, understanding complexity well enough, understanding systems well enough, understanding what metrics to look at and how to define those metric systems and those performance management systems takes some level of maturity and systems thinking, right? Not a cup of tea for everyone, right?
For sure.
And you need to respect that art. So I think being able to get that was also the challenge upfront, and to explain to people कि सब लोग नहीं कर पाएंगे. It is not a generalist problem statement. Some people can wing it, some people can, and if you are smart, you generally get most of it, but not all of it. And if you really want to excel at it, then you genuinely need people who are in it for making a career in operations supply chain, as opposed to looking at it as a stepping stone to moving into something else.
Such an amazing insight and so well articulated. And I agree with that completely. Like the fact that finding the right people, and not just from overall skill set perspective, but from the way they think and whether they're capable of systems thinking or not.
Correct.
That makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And I think that applies to all domains in
startups.
startups. Like you need that systems thinking capability.
Correct.
And so amazing. Thank you. I mean, it's become more and more clear now, and as like you mentioned with Flipkart and all of the other ops-heavy businesses that have taken birth and are going great guns. Maintaining an efficient supply chain is crucial, right?
Absolutely.
So, how does Wakefit optimize its logistics and maintain a really good, tight, coherent supply chain?
Yeah, I think very good question, right? One of the good parts, and I think I enjoyed this, was a very, very refreshing feeling when I joined Wakefit, is that inherently it has always been a very, very efficiently built supply chain. But one of the most important parts that Ankit, our CEO founder, also solved for is that he went back to the product design itself to say that what can I change in my product to ensure that the supply chain continues to be efficient. For example, when we had launched mattresses way back, which is what we started the business with way back 2016, vacuum pressed roll pack mattresses were not something that was really happening in India. But that is what he started with. He said that is the only way we are going to sell mattresses. That allowed significant efficiencies to kick in on day one of our mattress logistics, right? And we've continued doing that. When we launched furniture about 3 years back, the amount of time that we spent in understanding how much time does the carpenter spend at the customer's house. For example, there are beds which we used to spend about 1 hour 15 minutes to install at the carpenter's house, and we kept looking at what can we change in that product assembly upstream in the manufacturing itself so that this time can come down, right? And continuous evolution of the product dimensions and what can be changed in the product itself has now ensured that 1 hour 15 minutes is down to 30 minutes, right? So understanding that supply chain and operations is not a standalone piece in and of itself, but it links back to the product that is actually flowing through the supply chain. It links back to demand planning being very tightly done. And all of these upstream decisions have an impact on how supply chains can become efficient is an understanding that is very well understood within the organization. That allows us to keep chipping away at supply chain and continuously making it more and more efficient on a daily basis. So I think on a lot of occasions, people assume supply chain and logistics as a vertical.
Yeah.
Product design, product as a vertical. But the moment you think of operations and supply chain and logistics as a horizontal is when it starts to really play out. For example, when you look at IKEA as a business case, and it's a wonderful business case. When IKEA starts to design a product, they start designing a product for the customer from the standpoint of saying that it has to be the lowest cost from a supply chain perspective. That is the starting point. From there, they start the designing. The designing does not start off from saying that, you know what, I want a beautiful product. Yeah. That is a second order problem for them. The first order problem is these are the functionality and use cases that we're trying to solve for. And this is the price point that we have to hit. How can I make it flat packed? What is the manufacturing process that I need to change to ensure that this product can be flat packed, right? And that is how they actually design the product. Wow. Then they keep going back upstream to their manufacturers, to their suppliers of raw materials to say that what can I change in your supply chain so that you can give me a product that is cheaper so that I can eventually pass on that benefit to my customer, right? Yeah. Being able to control and being able to appreciate the impact of each of those elements on your supply chain and hence the customer price is brilliant, right? And is a case study in and of itself. Yeah. Right. And we keep looking at what we can do at all points.
It's so amazing that you're sharing that. I'm sure there are a lot of early stage founders, businesses in the durable space who are building stuff, and they may not be thinking of it this way, that first they build the product and then they think of distribution. Yeah. But distribution has to be accounted for in when you're ideating on the product and the design, etc. That has to be one of the key criteria.
Absolutely. In fact, when you look at large FMCGs, right, when they are also designing products and they take a lot of time to really research and then design, and they look at distribution costs, and hence there are standard pack sizes, right? The reason there are standard pack sizes is because that's the size of the containers, that's the size of the trucks, and hence everything has flown back from there. So today what we take as a given were very, very meticulous decisions that were made at some point of time to ensure that the product cost to the end customer factors for efficiencies in supply chain, which has to get apportioned right up front as opposed to it being solved for later.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that in my head, at least there was light bulb moments that went off when you were talking about all of this. So thank you. Help me understand a little bit around the tooling. That what was your current stack, or what is your current stack? Like, how do you look at tooling for operations?
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I'll be honest, it's fairly rudimentary, right? We have a long way to go when it comes to tooling, metricization, technology playing a significantly stronger role. We've just about started on that path, but currently we use an ERP. We have SAP as the backbone because we have production. So we use SAP for a lot of our transactions for a significant part in the supply chain. And then we have products that we've built in-house, right? Which sit on top of SAP, and that is where our fulfillment operations are handled out of, right? right? Of course, there is a whole lot more that we need to do on both of these plays, and that's work in progress, as you can expect with
Yeah,
any startup.
with any startup,
But that's happening, right? There are a whole bunch of pieces. So basically, because we started off as a mattress company, we've solved the product fulfillment parts of it. As we became more and more a furniture company as well, and today we are a home company for what it's worth. In the furniture space, it is not just product delivery that matters, right? It's also about product installation, after sales support that you need to provide, and how do you track after sales support. So a bunch of those parts are still being developed.
And what was that point, or what was not working where you realized that you need a product like Locale? And what's been how did that come about? What brought that about, and what have you seen?
Sure.
Love
So
to.
Locale, we've still not started to use on the operations and the fulfillment side of things, right? We are using. So I'll just to give you a sense of the complexity, right? We have about 7,000 odd mattress SKUs that we sell on Wakefit.co, on Amazon, and on Flipkart. And we also sell on Pepperfry and all, but these three are the largest pieces, and we have the retail stores, right? Across these three platforms, which we can metricize to what it's worth, these 7,000 SKUs we sell across 19-20,000 odd postcodes. At any point of time, across any of these three, a product could go out of stock. A product could end up having a higher EDD meaning or PDD, which is the promised delivery date, for any of the nodes not working the way we are expecting them to work. And we know for a fact, and we've seen our data also to know that the consumer conversions drop when the PDD goes above a particular time frame.
Yeah.
So we know it has a straight revenue impact. And we said the first use case that we will solve for using Locale is to create alerts on whenever a product is going out of stock on any of these platforms, including Wakefit, or if the PDD is going above a particular threshold that we would have set for that particular SKU in that particular postcode on a particular platform, right? So that is the use case that we have started using Locale for. Over the last month and a half, we've managed to use this mostly on the Wakefit website. Amazon, Flipkart, there are still some integration issues that we're solving for. But on the Wakefit website, as we've managed to solve for it, our out of stock percentages have dropped from about 1% to actually close to 0%, right? Which is brilliant. We at least know now that products will not go out of stock, or if they're about to go out of stock, we have people looking at it immediately and being able to solve for it. So that extent, I think it's a happy story. We need to solve for Amazon and Flipkart as well. Once we're able to solve for that, then we at least have a very strong template of how to keep monitoring it from a revenue generation perspective, right? Then we will keep taking it back into the supply chain of saying that now what are the other areas where we need to create alerts, because we know there are a bunch of places where we need to create these alerts. But for that to happen, we also need to put in place the right tech stack so that we are metricized, we are tooling it first and then being able to create the alerts, right? So I think it will keep going hand in hand that way.
For sure. And it's always a work in progress and
Absolutely.
iteration and
Correct.
expansion,
Correct.
all of that. But one thing that you brought up, which was very interesting and you put it very well, was that now you can rest back and sit back and rest assured that if there is going to be a problem, somebody or the right person will know about it. Whereas earlier there was a lot of we would get to know late, or we would get to know and we weren't able to address it in time. So we're proactively preventing the problem from happening in most cases.
Correct.
I'd love if you can do a comparison of before after. Like, what was it before when you couldn't sit back and rest assured that it's going to get addressed versus?
So we have a internal WhatsApp group, on out of stock and EDD queries, right? And our CEO is very active in that group. He's the one who keeps sending screenshots saying, yeah, why is this product out of stock? Why is this product the EDD high and all of that stuff, right? And he's been doing this for ever since he started the business. So we know for a fact that morning 6 to 7, we'll get a bunch of pings from him because he would have gone across sites looking at particular SKUs, whatever, and send whatever number of screenshots. Over the last month, we've seen a reasonable amount of reduction in the number of screenshots he's sending. So,
nice.
So
That's a win for sure.
So I don't think he's still entirely 100% happy, but I think his displeasure has potentially reduced a bit. So yeah.
Awesome. And now that you've been using Locale for some time now, what's been you've already shared the impact, but anything else you'd like to share in terms of any difference that you've seen other than this?
Yeah. So I think when we were doing the demo, right, and with the team as well, during the demo, our teams, at least the number of interesting use cases that they came out with, right, and the number of light bulbs that went on in their heads. We can use it for this, we can use it for this, we can use it for this was great to see. It was a challenge for me to personally tell them, you know what, let's pick one use case and solve for it first. Let us be sure that it is working. give ourselves the opportunity to succeed,
Yeah.
right? And once we do that, then we can build on from there and take a whole lot more use cases to keep solving for. I think so that has been, and it was after some time that I had seen the team energized, as well as looking forward to a product coming in where they could see their ideas getting to life, right? So I think that was a strong win for me. No, and thank you for that, right? To be able to build a product where the teams feel a lot of light bulbs going out. Ki, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Does not happen with too many products. More often than not, when we go into product demos, the teams will find ki, okay, how will you solve for this? How will you solve for that?
Yeah.
So it's more you're solving for resistance and change management. In the case of Locale, I don't think we are necessarily solving for change management as much. We're really solving for ensuring that there is enough patience to ensure we're using the product the right way and extracting most value out of the product that we can. Because for what it's worth, in the use case that we've managed to solve, I still don't think we've managed to scratch the surface of the product for what it's worth. Right? There is a whole lot more that we should be doing in the product which we've still not done, right? Even in the use case that we've taken. And this is my belief, right? Having worked in a SaaS company as well, the success of the product lies with how much the client is willing to juice out of the product, right? And that works for the product company as well as for the client, and that is how strong relationships get built. When I was at Locus, and Unilever is a big client for Locus, but their level of engagement with Locus in how they want to solve, what problems they want to solve, allowed Locus to think of their product very, very differently, which I think is what companies look for. Product companies definitely look for from their clients to say, I thought this product will be used for this use case only.
Yeah.
And they suddenly are surprised that, we didn't think of this.
Yeah.
This is brilliant.
Yeah, and there's actually a great article on the web, I think it's by Jack Ma on this, that let 1,000 flowers bloom. That put it out there, see how people are using it. Customers will use your product in ways that you haven't even thought of.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So amazing. And I've got to say thank you for building such an amazing team. We're having such an amazing time working with them because like you said, they're excited, they're engaged. And a lot of that stems from the fact that they have systems thinking as a thought process, right? So they're able to quickly see that, hey, if I were able to do this on Locale, and this will have this impact in operations. So great to be working with the team as well.
No, it's our pleasure to be working with Locale as well.
Thank you. Any piece of advice that you have for other teams in the or ops leaders in the early stages or in the scaling stages? That any mental models that you can share that will add some value for them?
Absolutely. So I think it's important for the operations leader to be able to provide a constancy of purpose to the team, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In a startup, when you're actually starting, many a times you don't know what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and you'll come to do multiple things and you'll figure out. But what has to be clear upfront is what is the purpose? What is it that you're trying to solve? How you get to that answer is a different problem, right? The operations team, because the orientation of the operations team is always to create processes and then being able to do it on a day-to-day basis, they need that constancy to exist. I think we underestimate the importance of routine. And it's also a dichotomous situation, right? People who come into startups saying that it is very flexible. Every day you don't know what's going to happen. You start your day fresh every day. But I think it's a cliche.
Yes.
Right? Most people want to know upfront what they're going to do because, I like to give the example of kids growing up or children or babies when they grow up, right? When a baby starts to crawl or when they start to walk, within the first 3 days, walking becomes autonomous. And that is the only time then they can the brain can start focusing on the next task to learn. And that is the only way growth happens, right? Tasks have to become autonomous. Tasks have to become routine. And that is super important to appreciate.
Yep.
As an operations leader or even as a startup founder, startup leader, if you're not putting in place the rigor to automate and make things routine, you will not be able to grow.
Yes.
Because you're spending in the human context, you're spending your cognitive load on your day-to-day.
That is so well said and so amazing to hear you say that, because I've thought on this on similar lines many times in the past, and I think that the whole idea of startups are a place, and they are a place where you get a lot of action, you have a lot of you build a lot of things, you create a lot of processes, systems, teams, cultures, etc. But I think there are some things that you need to always be on the watch out for where change is needed, but in other things, getting into the routine is way more important.
Absolutely.
So,
correct. And people underappreciate the importance of routine.
For sure.
But,
cool.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts that you might have? And no pressure. I mean, if there are some that come to mind, please share.
No, and the other thing is, and especially for operations leaders and in the current environment, for what it's worth, being humane towards people, super important, because we have a 40-year career that we'll live through. What we do today will potentially help us solve today's problems, but karma comes back. So and especially in operations where it's a very very people centric function. Most functions are so. And tough times call for tough actions, but when you take those actions, how you treat people is super important. Many a times they're not in your hands, but you have to do what you have to do. But how you treat people in those times is a measure of your character. So being humane, and at the same time, when you're growing, and there are a bunch of companies who are growing phenomenally well, being cognizant that overhiring is not an answer, and throwing people at a problem is not a long-term answer is also important. To be calculated in hiring people, so that you don't have to ask people to go when something's not working, right? I think is a lesson that I have learned along the way, and it's important that most people understand the importance of it. And of course, being able to think system first, being able to use design principles to get the answer right the first time is super important. I think people also assume that iterations is a good way of solving. While it is a good way of moving things forward, it does not preclude that you should not be getting your first answer right. Most people assume that you can start with a shoddy answer and then reiterate your way out of a problem. It generally does not work. You have to get your first answer 85% right for sure.
Yeah, you can't be lazy.
You can't be
use
lazy.
iteration as an excuse to be lazy.
Absolutely.
You've got to think through the problem and at least try your level best to get it right. And then, of course, there's iteration that will follow. And if you've done your homework, then that iteration becomes so much more clear and easier to do. And then just walking in without.
The excellence demands that you are good in your first attempt. And excellence should not be confused with perfection and hence inaction. But excellence is a pursuit. One should keep at it. But the starting point has to be better than good.
Otherwise, for sure. I agree. Can't be lazy about it.
Can't be lazy.
So thank you so much, Kaustabh, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Some amazing insights you've shared. I'm really excited about this episode going out there and the audience looking at it and learning from everything that you've shared.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Kaustabh.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.